Hello and welcome to part one of my marching snare drum technique video series. This video is going to cover grip and setup. Those are going to be the two main topics of discussion. First things first, we're going to go ahead and grab yourself a stick and we're going to find our balance point. Our balance point is where we're going to hold the drumstick in order to achieve maximum rebound and response from the drum head. So that's very important for our sound. We're gonna go ahead and divide the stick evenly into thirds like so. Try to make it as even as possible. For your innovative percussion snare sticks, the bottom third is going to be around where the USA logo is. For Vic Firth sticks, it'll be around where the flag is, but we're gonna find that bottom third and we're gonna place our thumb and index finger right on that bottom third of the stick. The thumb, we're going to place the pad of the thumb, the center part of the thumb, the medius part, directly on the center of the stick. We want to make sure that thumb doesn't slide off to either side of the stick, but the center of the pad of the thumb is right there. Our index finger is just wrapped around it, and that'll basically sit between the first and second knuckle across from the thumb right here. We want to make sure they stay across from each other the whole time. We don't want the thumb to come up higher. We don't want the index finger to come up higher, so on and so forth. With the back three fingers, we just gently wrap them around the stick loosely. And we just want to make sure that there's no weird gaps or spaces between our fingers like that. But we also want to make sure that we're not like squeezing our fingers together because that's going to create unnecessary tension. So try not to have any weird gaps, but don't squeeze your hand. But as you can see, the stick is sitting in the back of my fingers like so. And that is essentially our right hand grip. If you're playing with a match grip technique, then all you do on the left hand is the exact same thing. For the traditional grip, we're gonna start with that same process. We're gonna divide the stick into thirds, but this time we're gonna place that bottom third into the crevice between our thumb and our index finger. We wanna make sure it's all the way down in the crevice. We don't want it to be up here and have like a weird gap going on right there. We wanna make sure it's all the way down. And then what we want to get used to first when doing this is we want to make sure that we can make this hand point straight without like flexing out our fingers or doing anything weird, but be able to have this hand be vertical and make the stick horizontal, which is going to force us to apply a little bit of pressure back here, right? So we're going to engage that small muscle group and get used to having it engaged all the time to make sure that we don't let our stick slip out of our hand. So sometimes I would just start people by just doing this and just holding it for a little while, getting used to that, right? Because if you relieve that pressure, the stick just drops down, right? So get used to having that there. And then what I always like to do at this point is practice our rotation, practice our movement. So when we're set here, all we're gonna do is we're gonna twist to where the palm is facing directly up and the stick is facing up as well. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just practice hitting the drum like so. So all I have to do here is move fast, throw it down, and if I move quick enough, the stick's just gonna pop back up on its own. And we're just gonna go through this and try to make sure that we can stay engaged back here to where we don't lose the stick. So this is what that looks like. And if you're brand new to it, like I said, it might slip out. You might have to like start readjusting or whatever. The goal is to practice doing this for a little while to where we can kind of go like a little bit faster, go for a longer period of time without having to make any adjustments. Cool. Once we get used to that, then it's time to add the rest of the fingers onto the stick and create the grip. So first thing I'm going to mention for this is the attachment here, the thumb to the index finger. So again, the pad of the thumb, that center part, is going to sit in between the first and second knuckle of the index finger, right on the side of it right there, almost creating a little T like that. And then that index finger is just going to naturally curve around the top of the stick. And then the middle finger just matches the curvature of the index finger. So we want to make sure that the middle finger isn't pointing down like that and creating any sort of gap. We want to make sure that both of them are curved all the way around the top of the stick. And then we just need to make sure that we keep this connection that I talked about there intact the whole time. because we're gonna need that later. The bottom two fingers, you can kind of see I'm already doing here, but the ring finger just rests on the bottom of the stick. So with the ring finger, it's gonna sit on the cuticle. Your cuticle is where your skin and nail meet. If you've been playing traditional for a while, you can see that area, there's like a little divot right there. That's where my stick goes. And you get used to it at first. Obviously, there's gonna be some irritation there. You might bleed, whatever. You get used to it over time. So keep it there. Make sure that we don't have that nail sticking out, right? And then the pinky is just there for support. The pinky is gonna be there to support the ring finger. So since the pinky is smaller, it can't sit directly by the side of it and have the same curvature. So it's going to go like slightly under, slightly to the side. But yeah, it does not go like fully underneath like that. It'll just be right down here, and it's just kind of along for the ride. Be sure not to flex it out and disconnect the pinky and the ring finger, because what that does is it causes this tendon that goes down our arm right here to tense up, and we don't want any sort of unnecessary tension in our hands or arms or anything like that. So yeah, that is the left hand grip. So now that we have our left hand grip and our right hand grip, we're going to talk about setting them up at the drum. So let's go ahead and start with the left hand, because that's already the one that we have out. The biggest thing that we need to talk about with the setup for the left hand is the angle at which we have the stick pointing in our hand. Is it like this? Is it like this? Is it like this? Like where is it, right? So the biggest error with this is having our hand too flat like this. A good analogy for this is to imagine that it's like raining. And then if water could hit your palm and like collect in it, like that, then it's too high up. If we turn it over like this to where like rain wouldn't even hit the palm at all, it'll just hit the thumb here, the top of the hand, then that's too far in the opposite direction, right? So we kind of need to find that middle ground to where water could come, hit the palm of the hand right here, and then drip out, yeah? So that kind of explains the angle. And then whenever we set it up to a drum, another analogy that I like to use is to imagine that there's a little snowboarder going down your shoulder. We should have a straight line set up right here with the bicep down the forearm and off the thumb, right? And it can kind of go all the way down that slope. If our angle of our hand was too much like this or too much like this, the snowboarder wouldn't have the slope, it would crash and burn, right? So we need that slope there set up and it goes straight off. Also, we need to make sure that the elbow is not pointing outward, because that would make the slope uneven, obviously. So we keep our elbow relaxed towards our body, and it's in a straight line. So my body orientation is like this. The orientation of my arm is in that same direction. It's just slightly out to my side, yeah? We need to make sure that the elbow doesn't start coming in while we're playing. We're gonna get into like obviously playing later, but we need to make sure that that elbow motion never comes in or never flexes out like this. When we flex the elbow out like this, it creates tension up here, which we don't need. So avoid that. So we have that angle of our hand and of our arm in relation to where it is on the drum. We need to talk about our taper position. Our taper position is the angle at which the stick is at, right? So we always need to set up with a slightly downward angle, or else we would just like hit the rim all the time if our stick was flat, because the rim sticks up higher than the drum head. So we need a slightly downward angle, but we don't want too much of a downward angle, because then we're gonna be hitting with the top of the bead. The center of the bead is what gives us that full sound that we want. So if our taper is super high up like this, and we're getting that top of the bead sound, we lose a ton of quality. I'm gonna demonstrate that for a second. So I'm gonna play at the same height, same velocity, and I'm gonna give you that top of the bead sound, and then I'm gonna start to slowly lower my taper, and just listen for the change that happens. Drastic difference difference there. Here, when I'm playing with that top of the beat sound, like the drum is like lower in pitch, and then obviously we don't get the fullness of the volume. But then once I start to lower it, the pitch raises and we get a much fuller sound. So you could have the height down, you could have the velocity down, but if your taper is wrong, you're just doing yourself a disservice. So always be sure that that taper is there the whole time. I like to teach a one finger taper position, which means that I would essentially, from the top of the rim right here, I just put one finger on the top of the rim, and then I place the stick to where the bottom of the stick is touching the top of my finger right there. And as you can see, after I take that finger away, that gives me a slight downward angle. See how slight it is? It's a very small downward angle, but it's just enough to where I'm not gonna hit a rim shot, I'm not gonna hit the rim, and I'm gonna get that center of the bead full sound. We just need to make sure that when we're playing, we always come back to this position. We don't come up and then come down like this. We set here, we go up, and we always come back down to that spot all the time to get that full sound. A lot of people teach a two-finger taper position. It's just kind of a preference thing. Cool, I think that's everything we need to talk about in the left hand for now. Let's go ahead and talk about the right hand setup to the drum. With the right hand setup to the drum, we want to make sure that the elbow is relaxed. Just like we talked about on the left hand, if the elbow is pointing out like this, then it's going to cause tension in the shoulder. Same thing in the right hand. If I like point my elbow out like this, it's going to cause this to come up, and it's just going to make things more difficult, especially when we have a harness on and we're carrying the instrument. So we need to make sure that this right elbow stays relaxed, but that we don't bring it into our body. When we bring it into our body on the right hand, you can definitely notice it because you see this happen to the wrist. You see this thing. So as soon as I bring my elbow out, you see that bump goes away and it becomes straight again. We need to make sure that we have that going on the whole time. So it's kind of like finding a middle ground again. It's a lot about balance, right? So not here because I have this bump, but not here because then I have tension. So I need to find that middle ground to where I'm as relaxed as possible. The angle that the hand is at. So if my thumb is facing straight up, that's what is coined as the French grip. If my thumb is flat horizontal, that's what's referred to as the German grip. For our application, we're gonna find an in-between and go at a 45-degree angle. So my thumb is at a 45-degree angle off the stick. So check that out, make sure the thumbnail stays at that angle and again, doesn't slide off to either side. And some people have coined that the American grip. I don't call it that, but you may hear it referred to as such. So we have that angle set up. We make sure that our elbow is relaxed, our shoulder is relaxed, and then again, we set up that one finger taper position so that we have the same angle with the left hand and the right hand so we can get the same quality of sound, right? So when I have both sticks out on the drum here now, you can see that if I have a correct taper position in both hands, that I'm even, I'm level. If you were playing on a tilt drum, you would bring your left hand up a little bit, but since our drum is flat, we need the same taper in both hands, especially focus on that left hand taper position because that's usually less comfortable for people at first. So keep that in mind. In terms of the angle that my sticks are set up as, I want to make sure that I don't push out too much like this or that I don't come in too far like this. It depends on the drum brand that you're using, but with most drum setups with like Pearl and Mapex and I think Yamaha as well, you can reference the lugs. So you have two lugs right here. The next two lugs out, our sticks are gonna be just outside of both of those, just barely outside of both of those to set up the angle. It's almost like a 45-degree angle with both hands. The common thing to do is to make this happen, to push out the left hand, to bring the right hand in. So just avoid that. Make sure that both hands are even. Just like if we were playing match grip, we wouldn't play like this. That wouldn't make any sense. So we need to make sure, even though we're playing with traditional grip, that we do that same thing, that we have that same setup. Sticks are still in that taper position. The last thing that I think we need to talk about is, and you probably picked up on this already, but our beads need to be directly next to each other, as close as they can be. We never want to set up with our beads super far apart like this. They need to be as close together as possible so we can get the center of the drum head sound. The closer you play to the edge, the more the sound changes. Even if you move just like 1 or 2 inches off the center of the drum head, drastically changes the sound. I'm going to demonstrate that as well. So I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before. I'm playing with the same velocity, same height. I'm just slightly going to change my zone in my right hand here to move out, and I want you to listen for the difference in sound. I hope it picks it up on the camera. Cool. So I moved like very little. I didn't even go like all the way out by any means. I just went out like an inch or two. But there's still a huge difference in sound. I hope you're able to hear that, like I said. But definitely, like, you'll notice it live. It's a very big difference. So we always need to make sure that our beats stay as close to the center as possible, right next to each other. Obviously, we don't want to accidentally hit our beats, but get used to them being together, and then you'll learn how to play like that without hitting them. And then when we're just set like this, we want to hover the beads as close to the drum head as possible. You'll notice once we start getting on the move that those beads will start to float, and that just makes it look sloppy and unprofessional. So we want to make sure that we have that the whole time, and that will also help us maintain that taper position as well so we can get a full sound. So that's it for part 1 of my video series. So we covered grip and setup to the drum. I hope it was beneficial. If you have any questions about any of the stuff covered, please reach out. Thank you for watching. Much love.